Welcome to SolidWorks configuration. I decided to make this video to highlight the power of SolidWorks configuration. So for the case study, I will create a butt hinge. As you can see over here, we're gonna go for the simple model. And the main idea behind this is to only create a single part and have that part within multiple configurations. So we're gonna have a leaf with 2 barrels. We're gonna have the same leaf, the same part with three knuckles over here, as we can see. And we're also gonna change various radius cutouts, or we can also influence the thickness of the leaf and also the material. So let's get started. I'm gonna jump within SolidWorks. I'm gonna create a new part. And over here I will start. So I will go within the right plane and I will create a new sketch. I will define a corner rectangle using the origin, and I will make this 50 millimeters by 30 millimeters. I will also add a sketch fillet. So for those two corner points on the right, I'm gonna add a radius of 5. Now, with this sketch defined, I will have this extruded. This will be let's say the thickness of the leaf. So in this case, I will go with something like 2 millimeters. We can go with 2 millimeters should be fine for the default version. And now if you want to design those barrel knuckles over here, I can create a plane from the top. So all the way, let's say we're gonna have 10 millimeters over here. So I will select that and I will create a reference plane. So starting from the top, I will want to create a reference plane over here at 10 millimeters. We're going to start designing the first one with those 2 knuckles in the middle. So over here, jump within a sketch and I will define 2 circles. Afterwards, we're going to put some dimensions. So let's say for the large one, it will be 7. For the smaller one will be 5. And now I want to make this tangent over here. So I will select the circle, select that, and make it tangent. I will do the same for this edge as well. In this case, this one, so the top one. This is the final position. And now I will use the line tool in order to complete this sketch. So I will connect the origin point all the way to the middle. I will use the same line in order to connect this point all the way to the intersection over here. And I will also add a new line to connect those 2 circles. So something like this. And we also need a line that will connect the profile over here. And now using the trim tool, I'm gonna cut everything until we're gonna have, let's say, the final shape of that knuckle. So this will be removed. As you can see over here, that will be removed as well, and this one as well. And within newer versions of SolidWorks, we're gonna see how that will look now. So we're gonna have that gradient indicating we have a close sketch. I will select that edge and I will make it 1 millimeter. So we see that currently we have that over constraint, but I will also add 30 degrees all the way over here, and that should make everything black. So that means we are fully defined. And now I will have this extruded. I'm going to type in 9 millimeters for this one. You're going to keep the merge result on, and we're going to have that created. Now I will create a secondary plane within the middle of our part, which will be 25. And the previous generated extrude, I'm gonna have that mirrored along the newly generated plane. Now I can also define some cutouts over here. So I will select the inner plane over here and I will create 3 circles. I can position a circle directly over here because I know that's the middle plane. I'm gonna hold down Control, select all of those and go to equal. And now I'm gonna position, let's say for example, maybe you want this to be at 50 millimeters. We're gonna make all of those to be 5. And we also need to have that constrained, so let's say 7 millimeters on both axes. So this as well should be 7 millimeters. We can mirror underneath the circle, but I will just constrain this as well over here. So this will be fully defined. I will have them extruded cut. I can go with blind or I can go through all. If I will go with through all, in case I will change that thickness, it will always cut through everything. Now I can hide those 2 planes so I can better visualize this. And I also want to add a chamfer over here. By default, SolidWorks want to add a chamfer of 10, which is a lot in this case. Okay, so let's create that. By mistake I click on OBS on the second screen and I slightly moved the screen, so I'm sorry about that, but maybe the final video will have that. Now I see that it's calibrated again. So we have that chamfer defined. Now let's say that this is the default configuration. Therefore I can go over here up to configuration manager, and this will be the default. I can also give it a different name. For example, I can right click over here, add configurations. Let's take a look at this drawing again. So we have this barrel, the 5 knuckles. I can put in, I don't know, 2 knuckles and some other elements. So 2 knuckles. And we have a radius of 5 over here. I can type in radius 5 because we know that's the radius over here. I will click OK. Now we're gonna have these 2 knuckles R5. I can go back to the default now because I want to create a second one with 2 knuckles but with a smaller radius over here. So jump back to the default. Afterwards right click, add a new configuration. So we still want to have 2 knuckles, but I just want to have a radius of 2.5 over here. And I can also make this a different material, for example brass. So I will use the default materials over here. Now since we are within this 2 knuckles brass configuration, if I will go to the feature, I can change that. I know that the radius was created at the sketch level, therefore I will need to expand the first boss extrude, select the sketch, and we're gonna have the radius over here. But I'm not just gonna type in a different value over here because that will alter the other part as well. And here we have the advantage of configuration. So you're just gonna right click on that and we're gonna go to configure dimension. And within the configure dialog box, we're gonna have this. So we know that we want to have a smaller radius of only 2.5 over here. So I'm going to type in 2.5. I'm going to click OK. We're going to see how that updated. And we also need to define this to be brass. So for the material, we're going to do the same. I'm going to right click. I'm not going to edit the material. I will configure the material. And we see for the brass, I'm going to select the predefined brass material and hit apply. You're gonna see that the appearance for this material is different than the existing. Would you like to link the display? So yes, we would like to have also that display visually. And we're gonna see that SolidWorks will add this brass yellowish texture. Now, if I will jump back to the other 2 knuckle with radius 5 by double clicking over here, I can also configure a material for this one. So let's say that maybe for the default one, I'm gonna go with configure material. I can make it something like copper. Hit apply. We're gonna see that the copper will be with this reddish tint. So we have the brass, we have the knuckle one, and we have the default one, which doesn't have any material. And we can also make use of evaluate tool over here. So if I will go to evaluate, I'm gonna go for mass properties. We're gonna see that this part in the default state will have 24 grams over here. But if I will go to the knuckles with copper, which is this one, I'm gonna go to mass properties. We're gonna see that this will have, so let me select over here, clear selection, and select the whole part over here. So part 1 made of copper should have 28 grams. If I'm gonna go for the brass one, again mass properties, we're gonna see that this will only have 27. So if you're gonna take a look within the material configuration, so this is brass, I will just go to edit, but I will not change. We're just gonna see the density for this. So as you can see over here, we have the mass density for the brass, 8,500, and we have the copper, which is heavier. We see 8,900. Okay, so we saw how we can configure those materials. Let's also configure the 3 knuckle hinge. Therefore, I will go within the default one, go back over here, and now since I no longer need this extrude to be positioned over here, I can also not have this reverse and position at the top. And this is really important because that will alter the other configurations based on this. So the best option is just to have this suppressed. Therefore, I will go on the extruded profile over here. I will right click and I will have this suppressed within this configuration. But before I do that, I will also need to make the configuration because I want to have the default one, which I can open, modify, and save as another. So go within the configuration manager, right click, add a configuration. This will be 3 knuckles. Okay. And let's make this a higher radius, 7.5. Okay, and I will make this, let's say, steel. Hit OK. And now with this selected, I can go over here and I know that I need to have this suppressed over here. Since the mirror was generated based on that, that will automatically be suppressed by Solid as well, so that shouldn't be any problem. And now I will just want to expand this sketch because I don't want to trace this again. Therefore, I can go within the top view, create a new sketch. I can select that sketch that was previously used for Boss Extrude 2, and I will have this converted over here. And as you can see, that will position that sketch over here as well. And now with that selected, I can go to features, I can have this extruded again, and I want to have this position at the bottom, as you can see, 9 millimeters. Now, since we're gonna use 3 knuckles for this one, I'm not gonna use the mirror, therefore we're gonna make use of linear pattern. So I will select Boss Extrude, go to linear pattern, and we're gonna have the direction. So we know that we only wanna have the pattern on this direction, and we can increase over here the positioning. So we see with 20, we're gonna have that small gap over there. So I'm gonna go with 20.5, and that should fully align those knuckles. We know that we also want to have that configured over here, so that sketch radius over here. I said sketch radius because the sketch was created over here, so I will have this configured. and I will set this for the 3 knuckles, as you can see over here, are 7.5. I'm gonna add that 7.5 as well within the configuration. We're gonna have that increased. Also keep in mind that you can configure almost everything within SolidWorks. So we can configure materials, sketches, but we can also configure features. For example, I wanna have this chamfer configured over here. Again, I'm not gonna go and change that value. I'm gonna go to configure feature. And we're gonna see that within configure feature, I have the possibility to have this enabled or suppressed, but this is not what I want. So I don't want this to be suppressed over here. I want this to be, let's say, the value change. Therefore, I will go over here on the annotation panel. I will activate the feature dimensions. And we're gonna see, we're gonna have that positioned over there. We're gonna select that chamfer. And this is the value that we need to change. So I'm gonna right click on that. I'm gonna go configure dimension. And as you can see, now I have the possibility to change that value. Let's say that we want a higher chamfer over here of 1 millimeter. I will click OK. That will change. I will hide the annotations, so I don't want to see those anymore. But now I know that this chamfer will have that value. You don't need to activate exactly the annotation. If you're just gonna select that chamfer, you're gonna see how that will be positioned. But since the chamfer was created starting from the top one, we only gonna have that value position over here, and afterwards it will no longer be positioned. So you can also click over here, go over here and configure that. You don't need to display the overall dimensions of the part. But over here with the annotation, you can rapidly configure without having to identify exactly, okay, so this chamfer is for those. If you have a more complex part, maybe it's easier to use the annotation feature dimensions over here. Okay, so we have this. I will also configure the material. So let's go for something like plain carbon steel for this one and hit apply. And we're gonna see how that will visually look differently now. And now if I will just wanna swap between those, I can just come over here and I can see all those variations for the part. And now this will be the interesting part, because SolidWorks has the possibility to assemble the same part under different configurations. So let's go up to file and let's make an assembly from part. We're gonna be prompted to save this because I haven't saved this yet. I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna call this hinge. And now I will not drag and drop this part over here because I know that a lot of users do that. I'm just gonna click OK because this will ensure that the origin of the part, which is this point over here, will be coincident to the origin of the assembly. Otherwise, we would need to make a mate between those two. So keep that in mind where you are positioning, let's say, the first part. Now, since this is the first part added, we see the F over here and between parentheses. That means this is fixed. We can right click, have this floated if you want to, but I want this to be fixed. And we also have the possibility to add the configuration. Just by clicking on the part, we're gonna see a drop-down list over here, and we can specify, maybe I wanna add the copper one, which is this one. And we're gonna see how that will be changed. We also need to do that check mark over there, or maybe I want the 3-knuckle one over here. So I will go by default with the brass one. And now if I wanna copy this, I can just select it, and just like how you can copy reference planes, you can hold down Control and you're gonna grab that and move it to the side. And now the second configuration, I wanna make it with 3 knuckles, which will be this one. And now we're gonna do the alignment and the mating. I usually prefer to have the part a little bit rotated to make it easier for SolidWorks. So I know that this will be rotated like this ones, and afterwards with move component I'm gonna slightly position it within, let's say, the intended assembly position. Afterwards I will go to mate and I can add a concentricity mating over here, so we have the concentric. Okay, I'm gonna click OK, and I will also add the coincidence between the top part over here. So we're gonna have that position over here. We see that we have a little gap over here. So over here we only have 1 millimeter, and over here I think we have more. So we could go and change if that will be, let's say, the intended design to have that same value. As we can see, we have 1.5 millimeter more. So 0.5, while we only have 1 millimeter over here. But let's see how we can also use the mating configuration, because this is the final configuration step. So you can configure sketches, features, but you can also do that for mates. I will also define okay, so before I'm going to define the pin in the middle, as we can see over here, we're going to have that pin. I'm going to add those constraints. So we see over here within the mate, we're going to have those two that we defined. And now I'm going to go within the configuration, and I'm going to add a new configuration for this assembly. I'm going to type in the amount of the angle. So I want, for the first configuration, I will want to have 45 degrees between this face and this one. Therefore, I will go within assembly, I will define a mate. I will select those two surfaces, and we're gonna change this angle value. So we know that for the first one, we wanna add 45 degrees. I'm gonna type in that. I'm gonna go back to the default, because this is important. If I'm gonna try to add both 45 and 90 within the same configuration, it won't be able to do that. But within the default one, I'm gonna add a new one. I'm gonna type in 90. And you're gonna see that within the default one, we're only gonna have active those two. This will be suppressed. So that 45 degree will be suppressed. And we're gonna add a 90 degrees over here. So this is how configuration works with suppressing, just like within the previous one. And now we're gonna go back, and we're gonna make the new configuration where we're gonna have this fully open at 180. Within 180, we're gonna add that mate, and we're gonna have that position. So 180 degrees will be this one. And now within the configuration, if you want to rapidly swap between those and see how they will align, you can just double click, and the configuration will work based on that. And if you want to do some, let's say, manual testing, you can always go back to the default one, which we only have those coincidences, and over here you have the possibility to open this and move as you please. And now for the final part of this hinge, I'm gonna add a new part. So I'll go over here, create a new part. For the new part within SolidWorks, as we can see now with the mouse cursor, I can specify the location of the origin of the new part. So I'll position it over here at the top. We're gonna have this in place mate, as we can see. And I'm gonna start and draw a sketch for the inner pin of this. So I will go over here to sketch. I will create a circle. Okay, so let's take a look at that sketch. We're gonna have the plane. So this will be the front plane. Create a sketch. Go normal to. Okay, which will be this one. And we're gonna have the possibility to add that. We can make it concentric and also co-radial with the previous one. We're gonna add some tolerances later on if needed, and we can make this 50 millimeters. And we can also add that pin at the top, as we can see over here. We can make that that pin starting with a circle, let's say maybe 6, and afterwards we can have that rounded. So I'm just gonna make this roughly with 2 millimeters, and I'm gonna have this rounded for a radius of 2. Okay, so I hope that you find this video useful. If you're just getting started with SolidWorks configuration, I highly recommend that you make use of this tool. Also, I will add this video within the playlist. So over here on my channel, I have a SolidWorks 3D comparison playlist. I also have one for CATIA. As you can see, most of my videos are on CATIA, but I also want to create more for SolidWorks, since this is a very popular CAD software solution. So if you enjoy this content, please consider to check that playlist. I will also position a subscribe button over here to the right. Thanks for watching.